Good afternoon. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. The Lord will not cast off forever. Though he cause grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love. The Lord does not willingly afflict or grieve his children. Let us pray. O God of grace and glory, we remember before you this day our brothers and sisters. We thank you for giving them to us, to know and to love as companions on our earthly pilgrimage. In your boundless love and compassion, console us who mourn. Give us faith to see in death the gate of eternal life, so that in quiet confidence we may continue our course on earth until, by your call, we are reunited with those who have gone before. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Barb, and I am the coordinator of the Body Bequest program at Wayne State University. We would like to welcome you all here today. We're so glad that we were able to hold this service in honor of your loved ones. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to introduce to you now our Dean of the Medical School, Dr. Mark Schweitzer.
Thank you, Barbara. My mom died when I was a young teenager, and her funeral was on a Friday like today. It was Friday the 13th, if I remember. It was a rainy day, and my grandfather, who was her father, comes up to me and he says, Mark, the skies are crying. So I think the skies are crying for your loved ones. And the skies are also thankful for your loved ones, for what they've given. I was reading this morning a poem by the poet Lucille Clifton, and she wrote, "The universe is not asking us to do something, it is asking us to be something." And your loved ones were, are, and became something. They changed, helped to change, train the next generation of health professionals. Their sacrifice and your sacrifice affects patients who they've never met and patients of patients who they've never met. And there's no greater gift one can give mankind than to help someone and for them never to know that you helped them. To me, that is the greatest form of charity. Today they're going to give out the Nobel Peace Prize. I haven't heard what it is. Don't. I want to hear it on the radio. And that's arguably the most important or most prestigious prize one can be given. And they were interviewing odds makers about who they thought would get the Nobel Peace Prize. Was it the World Health Organization? Was it COVAX for vaccine? And the guy said a very interesting quote. The Nobel Peace Prize doesn't go to angels. It doesn't go to saints. But it goes to those who made the world a better place. And if that's who should get the Nobel Peace Prize, there's roughly 256 people who we're honoring here today who should get the Nobel Peace Prize. Because all 256 of them, inarguably, made the world a better place. When I was a child, we grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, and my father tried to be creative with vacations. Couldn't afford to fly anywhere, couldn't afford to stay in a hotel for more than a night, so we went to Gettysburg for a day trip. And my father said to me, Mark, this is not a battleground. This is a cemetery. And treat it with the respect that a cemetery should be treated with. So I'll leave you with a few words, paraphrase of what Abraham Lincoln said in the famous Gettysburg Address that we all learned in school. He said, the world will not long remember what I say here, what we say here, but will long remember what your loved ones did here. And so the world should long remember what your loved ones have done for society, have done for their fellow man, and have done for sick people and for patients. And the greatest form of charity is doing a good deed that person doesn't know you did it for them and can never repay you. And to me, your family members made the ultimate good deed, the ultimate Nobel Peace Prize, the ultimate good for society. I can't express enough the appreciation that the school has, that these future doctors have, and that the patients who are unseen as of yet have. But you should hold that in your heart, that this sacrifice was a sacrifice to make the world a better place. And I can think of no greater sacrifice than that. And thank you, and you have my sympathies. And this is a solemn occasion, but a very meaningful occasion. And a meaningful occasion for me and for the students. I am truly sorry for your loss.
Now we'll hear from Dr. Richard Baker, our Vice Dean for Medical Education.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Dean Schweitzer, for your powerful words. Anatomy class is not only the initial immersion into the study of medicine, it is where our students bond into groups that often result into collegiality and lifelong relationships. This would not be possible without the commitment of your loved ones. We could teach anatomy through books, computers, or simulation devices, but the experience would be greatly diminished and certainly less intimate. In more ancient times, the study of anatomy was a criminal violation, considered profane. But anatomy studies are sacred in that they unveil the secrets of the human system to students so that they can go forward to improve the world and the lives of countless others. This would not be possible without this invaluable contribution by you and your loved ones. Our bodies remain miraculous and become even more so through the detailed study of this system. To initiate the study of medicine through anatomy class is the equivalent of launching into the solar system. It is the basis of lifelong study of the human and our attempts to heal our fellow men and women. In a very real sense, we and our students can never repay this legacy. But know that your commitment will live on in perpetuity. It will touch and heal many. There can be no more valuable bequeathment to mankind. Thank you. Thank all of you.
And now we'll hear from Dr. Paul Walker, our Gross Anatomy Course Director.
Good morning, everyone. As Barb said, I'm with the students and the faculty and your loved ones during the course of gross anatomy education at the School of Medicine. And I want you to know how much respect and honor this class of students gave your loved ones. We began the year not knowing what was going to happen because we were entering the season of COVID pandemic, and we were not sure whether or not we would be able to have in-person gross anatomy. How would we instruct the students? As Dr. Baker said, we could give them computers. We could give them virtual anatomy, but that would not replace the experience that the students would have had if they had not seen gross anatomy in person. And so we began, with permission from the university, to offer in-person gross anatomy to the class of 2024 with restrictions that they would be dissecting with face masks and face shields, and also in different small groups. And we had to begin each lab with restrictions about how we could enter the rooms, how we could interact with one another while learning gross anatomy. And the class stepped up and did it with such grace and honor and respect for your loved ones. And we were able to have gross anatomy in person, and your loved one's contribution was in full for this class. Now, I can't tell you how important that is, because dissection of the human body is critical to the development of a physician. You can learn all the facts you want from a textbook or a picture, but the experience of dissection is transformative to these students. For one thing, the cadaver is considered the student's first patient. And the many variations encountered during dissection build an understanding that each patient is an individual. Your loved one's unselfish gesture has also contributed to their own professional development of each of the students, because you cannot leave the dissection room without having a sense of humility and feelings of compassion. These are emotions that physicians in training must feel and develop. Students also develop a spirit of teamwork during dissection, and you can't do it any other way without in-person dissection. They learn to step forward when it's time to lead, and they learn to step backward when it's time to follow. So it is not just the facts of anatomy that your loved ones have provided. And as you will hear from them today, it is much more. So on behalf of the faculty at the School of Medicine, we are extremely grateful to have received the gift of your loved ones, and hope our efforts have brought honor and peace to your family. Thank you.
Good morning. We'll now read Psalm 121. We'll be reading it responsibly, and you can find it in the insert in your program. We'll begin. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where is my help to come? He will not let your foot be moved, and he who watches over you will not fall asleep. Behold, he who watches over Israel. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The Lord shall preserve you from all evil. It is he who shall keep you safe. Together, the Lord shall watch over your going out and coming in from this day forth forevermore.
The first reading. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace. What do workers gain from all their hard work? I have observed the task that God has given human beings. God has made everything fitting in its time, but has also placed eternity in their hearts, without enabling them to discover what God has done from beginning to end.
A reading from the Book of Wisdom. But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish they seem to have died, and their departure was thought to be a disaster, and their going from us to be their destruction. But they are at peace. For though in the sight of others they were punished, their hope is full of immortality. Having been disciplined a little, they will receive great good, because God tested them and found them worthy of himself. Those who trust in him will understand truth, and the faithful will abide with him in love, because grace and mercy are upon his holy ones, and he watches over his elect. From the designated clergyman, we get to talk. The Book of Wisdom was written about the 1st century BCE. And though the title of wisdom seems a little bit pompous or may seem a little bit arrogant, it's actually one wise man who has lived and seen and experienced and evaluated life, passing on his wisdom to some younger man, some younger person, who is living in the time, a difficult time, and who is seeking to find meaning and purpose in life. They want to know how to live. They want to know if life has meaning, and it's just common. I like it for a couple reasons. I like it because it's common. It's 2,000 years old, and I would bet you and I and most of the people we know have struggled with the same issues. Why are we here? How do I be a good person? Is there something beyond this? Wisdom asks these questions and passes on some advice on how to live. It makes us as individuals important because it reminds us that our choices are more than we actually imagine. That we're not just numbers or some loose cog in the giant scheme of things. That those little things that we choose to do, those acts of kindness, those acts of justice, that just being good and fair, actually does change things. It marks the world and makes the world a better place. It's a record of that. Today's little section in reading, we read the author of wisdom looks at looks at the topic of death, and he sees some things there that I think that we ought to just hang on to, remember, or ponder with the master. First, he humbly acknowledges that there is a portion of life that is just beyond us, and that we have to trust in something or someone greater than us. That we don't have all the answers to everything, but we can live and know and trust in one who does. It says that death may look like it proves that life is vain, that there's nothing really there. But if goodness and meaning and purpose and kindness and love has any meaning, has any direction, it is to something eternal, fulfilling, and finding itself complete in a model and in God himself. The second thing it reminds us of, that life does have a purpose. We're not here by accident. We're not meant to just wander around like that, has lost, unnoticed. That you're here for this time and in this place for a reason. That the choices you make and the people you engage with and the kindness that you do is actually needed for the universe and needed in the world. The way that we are connected to one another, the way that we make this day and live in and day out and act with kindness and act with justice, is noticed by God and by others. The last thing I like, and I tell you, the older I get, the more I like it, is that the writer reminds us that at the end of all, there is rest. That after the life of struggles and competition and just trying to make ends meet or just trying to make it through the day, at the end of it all, there's a rest in God, that we find grace and we find mercy and we find comfort. Grief reminds us at times of just how uncertain life is. Letting go of someone that we cherished, someone that meant something to us, that we leaned on and relied on. The Book of Wisdom reminds us that in these moments too, we can let go and trust those we love to someone who loved them even more and who will care for them now and forever. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me if I'm up here? You guys can hear me? Okay. I'd like to express my sincerest gratitude for being here and being able to speak to you all today. And on behalf of all the students at the Wayne State University School of Medicine, I want to extend a warm, heartfelt thank you to those whose lives we are both celebrating and honoring today. I never got to officially meet my first patient. The journey I had with him was rocky from the start. As Dr. Walker mentioned, COVID-19 outbreaks led to sporadically canceled labs, including those for the head and the neck area. As I sat down to write this speech, one thing stood out to me in my reflection on my time spent in the lab. I never got to look him in his eyes. Even though I never truly met him, his impact on me will never be forgotten. He brought my lab mates and I closer than I could ever imagine. He was a mentor to 6 nervous students. He was our motivator, our teacher, and our rock in times of doubt. When we held his hand, we felt his strength, guiding us along in times of struggle. As physicians in training, he showed us the level of respect and responsibility needed in order to care for our future patients. He instilled qualities in us that we will carry with us through our whole career. Today, we see that there is way more to the story. Although he quickly became a part of our family, he will always be a part of yours. He was a father, a brother, a husband, a son, a neighbor, a friend, a helping hand in passing. Through your generosity, we have been given the greatest gift imaginable. As students, we take great pride in this honor, and we will work every day to prove ourselves worthy of such a gift. Today, as we celebrate the lives and memories of the departed, I see the sacrifice that my first patient gave to me. Today, I feel like I am finally meeting him for the first time, and for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Dana Labuda, an M2 at Wayne State University School of Medicine. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to be speaking here today, and on behalf of the students at Wayne State University School of Medicine, extend a thank you to those whose lives we have come to celebrate and whose generous gift we have come to honor. Nothing has quite made an impact on my education than the day I was first introduced to my patient. I remember walking into the anatomy lab that day scared and excited, and like many, very intimidated by what seemed to be a very daunting task. Over the course of the year, we became well acquainted with our first patients, learning every nerve in the body, the muscles, their attachments, and the branching of the arterial system. I learned so much more from my first patient than I ever could from any book or diagram. For me, and for many other medical students, this part of our education is imperative and helps mold us to become the best doctors that we can. On our first day, we were read letters that some of you had sent about your loved ones. You wrote about how loved they were, the lives that they touched, and the things that they accomplished. This moment stayed with me for the rest of my time I spent in anatomy lab, reminding me of the humanity at the heart of our work and the generosity that my first patient showed me. I remembered seeing all of our patients for the very first time and feeling so humbled by the generosity of each of them in the room. Although I will never know the name of my first patient, they have a special place in my heart and will be with me every step of the way through school and beyond. I would like to again express my sincere gratitude for those who have given us this great gift, and as we remember them, feel grateful and proud of the difference that they have made. Thank you.
Good morning. The medical student is a budding scientist, and he is undoubtedly eager to make his mark on the world. His eyes are bright, and his expectations reach to the farthest limits of the sky. But not so fast. Because I believe if the medical student truly wants to push science forward, even if it's only by 1 inch, he must first humble himself and come to realize that every single step he takes towards progress is only possible because of the contributions from individuals who came before him. This is what we mean when we say that science stands on the shoulders of giants. And today, we are gathered to honor those giants. They were known as mothers, sons, sisters, and grandfathers, but they consciously took it upon their own shoulders to become something more. Because only a giant can make a giant gesture like the one they all made. One that selflessly contributes to improving life for the rest of us. Can there be a better representation of the phrase, love your neighbor? Reflect on this. How often do we ever get an opportunity in our daily lives that ever comes close to a gesture as beautiful as this one? That even after their spirits returned into the hands of their Creator, your loved ones decided to leave their physical forms behind, to be rooted in the soil of science, like a strong oak tree, selflessly inviting my classmates and I to sit upon their sturdy branches, gifting us with medicine's most precious fruit, knowledge. But what is this knowledge? And what is so special about how they gave it to us? Well, as we move into this new optimized world, where the answers to all of our questions are only a click or tap away, opportunities for the genuine discovery of knowledge seem to be fading away. Do a Google search, and you can look at a heart or a liver and everything in between. There it is on a flattened 2x2-inch picture locked behind the glare of your computer screen. But there's a striking difference between a picture and a person, and that difference is real-world experience. The oceans weren't explored by people who just looked at maps. Motor City wasn't built by individuals who just looked at the parts of a car. And human life isn't fully understood by just looking at a picture. Whether it is sailing a boat or building a car or understanding humanity, there is something about real-world experiences that is an irreplaceable ingredient for our growth and development as people. If I were to try to put my finger on it, it's that real-world experiences force us to struggle our way towards our goals. It is the process of struggling that leaves a lasting impression, and lasting impressions are necessary in a long career like medicine. Learning about the human body in this way is slow-going and arduous. And if me and my classmates really wanted to discover what exists within people, we were going to have to earn it. And what did we find? What lies underneath? We discovered the body's meticulous organization of organs that were all of different shapes, sizes, and colors. We saw how vessels and nerves delicately coursed from head to toe. And we witnessed how easily this symphony of life could be disrupted by one foul player. It could all fall apart so easily. But in the end, it doesn't. Of course, people might argue, it does fall apart. After all, isn't that the reason why you were able to work with these bodies in the first place? And I would say that these people couldn't be more wrong. Because there is something even more resilient than a heart that pushes against a high blood pressure, or a liver that is bombarded by toxins. There is something even more resilient than a lung that was bathed in a cloud of smoke, or a brain overrun by a cancer. There is something even more resilient, and I was only able to discover this after realizing that it was none of these other things. It is that thing that continues to stand even after the body takes its last breath. Even when the symphony of life comes to a close, this most resilient thing continues to sing. And that is the song of the human spirit. A song that outlives its voice. A song that will always vibrate through us. Through memory, through influence, through wisdom, and through knowledge. It was the bodies of these giants that gifted us with the knowledge about organs. But it was their giant gesture to donate their bodies that gifted us with precious knowledge about the human spirit. Can you fathom something that is more resilient? While every individual has their own personal reasons for donating their bodies, I would like to think that they all have something in common that exemplifies the resilience of the human spirit. It can only be the human spirit that can stare in the face of its own mortality and say, even though I will be taking off, there is still work to do. There is something that I still have to offer. When most of us look into the eyes of our neighbors in need, we reach into our pockets and find nothing to give. But these individuals reached into those same pockets and found something. That something was everything they had left, themselves. So what is it that we really learned? We learned about the anatomy of the human spirit. Good luck trying to find that answer online. You're going to just have to see this one for yourself. And I think all of us, families, friends, and students alike, got a pretty good glimpse. Thank you.
And now we'll be reading the names so that we can honor and remember your loved ones. Stephen Adamczak, Samuel Albert, Dale Albert Allmayer, Clinton McKinley Anderson, Renee M. Armstrong, Barbara Ann Arndt, Ruth Lorraine Arnott, William Irwin Bars, John Joseph Bain, Wanda A. Baker, Evangeline Ball, Dorothy Rita Barker, Theodore Edward Barker, David Charles Barnett, Joseph Barron, Mary Patricia Berry, Charles Monroe Bartlett, Alan R. Bass, Janet Marie Beatty, Donna Mae Beck, Brian Kelly Bennett, George Lionel Benson, Thomas Edward Bessemer, Deborah Yvonne Birnbaum.
Edward Joseph Blarick, Karen Jo Bluer, Paul David Bluer, Walter Boytsik, George Augustus Bocas, Robert Lloyd Boudry, Patricia Ann Bork, Marlene L. Brainerd, Richard John Brennan, Arthur Lewis Bright, Danny Earl Bryce, Gary A. Bridell, Wayne Manley Buckner, Lorene W. Buchler, Betty Southern Boos, Deborah Ann Buffington, Irene Elizabeth Bogdowski, Donald R. Burkholder, Diane E. Burnett, Lorraine Bismick, Constance Rachel Caldwell, Marilyn Jean Callahan, Nancy Jean Cameron, Michael John Campo. Danny Lynn Carr, Larry Anthony Selmer, Patricia B. Coleman, Grace Annette Collier, Donald Coombs, Augustino Camelo Jr., Dorothy Elaine Compton, Enrique Contreras Jr., Jerome B. Kraft, Carmen Munoz Crites, Judith Ann Croce, Marjorie Edith Cunningham, Betty Ruth Cyphers, Walter Lee Davenport II, Willie Wood Davis Jr., Patricia Ida DeVito, Donna Sue Dombey, Lauren Kenneth Dunkel, Robert Francis Egan, Kim Lee Eckmeter, Kathleen R. Eldridge, Georgia Will Elliott, Walter Joseph Elzo, Clayton Eshelman, Diane May Fahy.
Rodney Aaron Fagan, Patrick J. Feely, Jomil Andrea Ferguson, Howard J. Featherston, Sylvia Judy Fiondo, Lori Virginia Fisher, Joanne Frank, Michael Frass, Nancy Jean Fullerton, Michael Milton Fulmer, Patricia Ann Gaddy, Leon Spencer Garwald, Dwayne Charles Gaynor, Timothy John Garden, John Arthur Gibson, James Christopher Gilbert, Michael Roth Gillette, Wilfred J. Gillies Jr., Gerald William Globig, Gary Michael Godin, Beverly Jane Goik, Claudia Pam Goldberg, Phoebe V. Goldstein, Charlotte Jean Gondert.
Alvin Grady, Paul Gunther, Ronald W. Guggen, Matthew Thomas Hagedorn, Amy Jean Haynes, David L. Hamilton, Jordan Ray Hancock, Mary J. Hanley, Geraldine Hardesty, Barbara Jean Hart Stewart, Barbara Lou Haas, Wilbur Laverne Haas, Kathleen Ann Hassan, Frederick Donald Hatcher, Susan Jane Hayes, John Mario Hebert, Albert B. Hennecke, Paul George Henriksen, Daryl Anthony Herter, Edward Charles Hayart, James William Hilton, William R. Hines, Barbara A. Hodenot, Sandra A. Hollick.
Mary Elaine Hopper, Ethel A. Horwitz, William Wessel Hosley, James Fleming Hoyle, James O. Huffmaster, Barbara Ann Heisel, Larry Lee Heisel, Helen May Iannotti, Joseph Alfonso Jackson, Wanda Sue James, Donald J. Jamo, Barbara Jean Johnson, Melanie Sue Johnson, Barbara E. Jones, Richard Fawcett Jones, Robert Eugene Julin, James Chester Kaiser, Donna Kiss, Leland Klein, James Leslie Carnegie, Shirley Marie Kogelman, Richard Leon Kuhn, Robert Lee Lang Jr., Nancy Furry Lee, Sally Ann Leeper, Vernon Francis Lemerand, Carl Heinz Leash, Mildred Dolores Londo, Jane Naomi McAllister, Virginia Jane McChesney, Bruce Daniel McClary, Jacqueline Marie McClure, Esther Connie McComsey, Annabelle Lee McDonald, Henry B. Maloney, Rose V. Marsh, Eileen M. Marshall, Elsie May Marshall, Aldrich Joseph Martin, Chester Lee Martin, Claudia L. Meadows, Dennis William Meeker, Lois Estella Meldrum, Sally I. Murkison, Martin M. Michaeloff, Margaret Ann Miller, Nancy Louise Murdoch, Christopher Joseph Neff, Lorraine Nielsen.
Catherine Roberta Nearly, Harry P. Newhon, Janice E. O'Connell, Patrick John O'Neill, Terry William Ormsby, Ruth Paith, Carmen R. Patton, Lily Peabody, Shirley Ann Phillips, Alan Eugene Raymer, William Randall, Marion Luke Rappa, Beverly Rawson, Paul Douglas Ray, Delbert Martin Raymond Jr., Michael Patrick Reagan, Cindy A. Reese, Forrest N. Reed, Liana Grace Reedy, Jack William Reese, Paul Andrew Reinhard, Stella Reinstein, Charles T. Rapinski, Howard Roger Rice, Carol L. Richards, David Martin Richards, Timothy James Rice, Eva Jean Ring, Nancy Victoria Rower, Craig Maxwell Rosso, Siema Sultan, Sally Jo Schmoke, Jerry Schrott, Rita R. Schubert, Eleanor Lorraine Shepard, Erla Gale Simler, Richard Stanley Small, Frank J. Smiggles, Louise Mabel Smith, William A. Snyder, Billy Joan Sonday, Jean Paul Stanley, Patricia Ann Stewart, Victoria Frances Stokes, Dorothy I. Sullivan, Andrian Lee Telford, William Rohr Terrain, Curtis Thomas III, Patricia A. Treadwell,
Judith N. Tyrell, John A. Uckley, Nancy Ann Unwin, Dennis Van Dorn, Edward A. Vargas, Sherry Ann Wergis, Paul Willard Vick, Carola K. Vogel, Marie-Therese Lucille Walbridge, Monrovia M. Walton, Dennis William Whipple, Yvonne Vitti, Chalani Tarangika Vikramasinghe, Sharon K. Wilcox, Sylvia Wilcox, Edith Virginia Wilson, Mike Wilson, Walter John Wilson IV, Dolores Volk, Donald Joseph Wolfe, Kama Woodley, David Keith Wright, Janet D. Young, Joseph John Zajac Sr.
Commendation. Just take your hand over your heart, hold the name of your loved one in mind. Let us pray. Give rest, O God, to your servants with your saints, where neither sorrow and pain are no more, neither sighing but life everlasting. Into your hands, O merciful God, we commend your servants. Acknowledge, we humbly beseech you, sheep of your own fold, lambs of your own flock, sinners of your own redeeming. Receive them into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of the saints in life. Amen.
This concludes the services here this morning. I would like to take this time to thank all of you for attending this morning's services. Special thanks to Father Terry for his words of comfort and prayer. I also would like to thank Dominic for providing the music this morning. And I would like to take this time to thank the School of Medicine class of 2024 for their attendance and participation this morning in the service. Immediately following the service here, for those interested, we are going to be walking over to the grave site right over there, and we will lay to rest the loved ones in the casket. You're welcome to follow us over. Thank you again for attending this morning. There is one last musical piece, and the words of it are found in your bulletin, and this is for all of us to sing together.